Am I live? Am I live? And I see the red line going right across the screen, which means I'm obviously live. Hey, how are you doing? I know that's an awkward way to introduce myself with the red line going through the screen. That's usually a sign that on I'm actually live with this live streaming. So anyway, today I want to talk about democratic socialism versus social democracy. I'm Bernie Bro, and let me talk about it. I want to talk uh, about what it means to be a democratic socialist or a social democrat. Are they really the same thing? And I'm going to do it in a way that's relevant to the present. There's no need to sit there and talk about Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. There's no need to talk about, Rosa Luxemburg, Edward Bernstein, or the early Fabians. There's no need to talk about the Bolshevik Revolution, the Mensheviks versus the Bolsheviks. There's no need to talk about, there's no need to talk about, even there's no need to talk about, Daniel De Leon's Socialist Labor Party versus Eugene Debs' Socialist Party of America versus the industrial workers of the world, yeah, or the battles between Stalin and Trotsky, to the point where he had an ice pick in the back of his neck in 1940 in Mexico. There's no need to mention all of this. We need to talk about we need to talk about what is relevant. And the best way to talk about what's relevant is what happened after World War II. And I think that the beginning, a good way to start is being the victors. The United States, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union defeated the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. And and the Soviet Union, other than being opposed to Hitler, was just, the government was evil. Communism is evil. And democratic socialism and social democracy ain't the same thing as communism. Like, but, there are people you can't ever convince of that. And, well, it is what it is. And then you got America, which is pretty much considered the epitome of capitalism. I like to think that after World War II, in a way, Britain found a middle way between Washington, D.C., America's capitalism, which was pretty reformed at that time because Franklin Roosevelt did a pretty good job of getting us out of the Great Depression. And any criticisms I do have of Harry Truman, and I do, on the domestic scene, he was not that bad of a president on economics, and he helped pave way for civil rights by desegregating the military. Um, but getting back to Great Britain, Winston Churchill, who who served the Britain well, defeating Hitler, deserves the credit. But another man also deserves credit just as much, and a lot of people don't know about this man in America. It's so sad. And that was the deputy prime minister in Great Britain during World War II. That was Clement Attlee. They had a coalition government. It was, I believe, a mixed cabinet between the Labour Party, the Conservative Party, and the Liberal Party. They all just put their differences aside to fight Hitler. And pretty much during the war, the three political parties made an agreement to have universal health care for the British people after World War II. So it wouldn't matter, in a way, probably wouldn't matter who would have came into power after World War II. Britain was getting universal health care, which by 1948, the National Health Service came into being, and the National Health Service exists to this day. And by the way, folks, The National Health Service in the UK is the most socialized medical system in the Western capitalist world today. Um, Britain's Labour Party nationalized several industries, created the welfare state, strengthened the trade union movement, gave everybody old age pensions, free medical care, um, vacation time, that sort of thing. And it became a vibrant social democracy in the 1950s, and so successful that conservative Prime Minister Harold Macmillan, in his quote, "You never had it so good," was intended to complement the reforms done by the Clement Attlee government. And what's sad about Clement Attlee is that a lot of Americans who keep in touch with British politics, world affairs, especially conservatives who love Margaret Thatcher because she went and got rid of all that socialism in Great Britain, which we ain't all gone. There's still a National Health Service, and there are still some state-owned industries in Scotland still. So, you know, just eat shit, right wing. Um, They don't know about the man that brought socialism to Great Britain, and that was Clement Attlee. His Labour Party government brought socialism to Britain, and Margaret Thatcher sadly dismantled much of it. Um, and this is why this is important, because Britain's our important ally in everything in the world. But by 1951, socialist parties, social democratic parties, and labor parties from the Western world got together. That included the Socialist Party of America, by the way, the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation in Canada, and even political parties in the third world as far away as India, the Indian National Congress. They all met in Frankfurt, West Germany, and they agreed to what was called the Frankfurt Declaration. And the Frankfurt Declaration called for revitalizing or reviving or reconstituting the old Socialist International that kind of collapsed by World War II. So, just in case you don't know what the Socialist International is, Socialist International is a worldwide federation of, as I said, democratic socialist, social democratic, and labor parties, and pretty much any political party at the center left from around the world. Some political parties within the SI are more radical than others. Some of them are more reformist, and it kind of balances this out. They're located in London, England, their worldwide headquarters, and has grown from being a European, North American, Australian, Oceania global federation to reaching out to Africa, reaching out to South America, and through Asia, the Middle East, and it's pretty much a worldwide, truthfully worldwide movement for the center left. And that movement exists today. As I said, the Socialist Party of America was a member, but the Socialist Party of America split three ways in 1972, and two out of the three, that is the Social Democrats USA, Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee, which became Democratic Socialists of America, eventually became members of the SI. But today, there is no American affiliate, as I'm aware of, to the SI, which is really ironic with the popularity of Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020, and the movement that's actually become somewhat mainstream for the first time in decades here in America. But anyway, as I said, this movement exists. It's a success story because democratic socialism and social democracy, and I think there was semantics, because if you read the statement of principle for the Socialist International, it pretty much calls for democratic socialism, and pretty much most of the political parties would describe themselves as such. The Labour Party in England, Great Britain, describes themselves as democratic socialists. The New Democratic Party of Canada describes themselves as democratic socialists. The Australian Labour Party describes themselves as democratic socialists. So I mean, my point is that that's what we're striving for. And as I said, some of them use the name socialist, some of them use the name social democratic, some of them use the name labor. Here in America, other than Democratic Socialists of America and the Social Democrats USA in recent years, we really do not have such a movement here. The Democratic Party would most people would think the Democratic Party would fit right in there with them, but the Democratic Party is not really that kind of party, although there were movements, and really there would have been a time, even as recent as the 1970s, late 70s, during the Jimmy Carter years, where you could almost argue that the Democratic Party was almost a de facto Labor Party. Not quite, and we just have an unusual history where the time for our Labor Party in this country never took place. I complain a lot why we don't have such a political party here. At best, we have people here in the United States who have the ideological mindset of somebody who would like to see things the way they're done in the UK or France or in Sweden, with the free medical care and the welfare state, and in certain instances, uh, publicly owned whole industries. We don't have that movement here, but we have individuals, and between Democrats and Republicans, obviously they're going to be a little more comfortable in the Democratic Party. However, the Democratic Party is conservative in a lot of ways, and in some ways, the Democratic Party is to the right of the center-right conservative parties in these other Western democracies. I mean, case in point, you talk to an average person. Well, case in point, compare Theresa May in the UK, the former Prime Minister of the UK, to Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House here in the United States. Nancy Pelosi do not believe in the modest single-payer Medicare for all. Theresa May supports the National Health Service. Bill Clinton, Barack Obama did not fight for single-payer Medicare for all. Just recently, with the COVID-19, Boris Johnson, who's somebody I would never politically support in the UK, said that the National Health Service saved his life. You see where I'm getting at, folks? The Overton window, even people who are further right in a lot of ways compared to the way it is in America, are at least progressive on healthcare. I've often have said, and I'm going to get some odd stares for this, because when I look at Great Britain, and I assure you, Margaret Thatcher was everything Britain did not need. She was not needed ever. I consider Margaret Thatcher one of the worst prime ministers Britain ever had. Having that said, if you would have given me a choice in a time machine to live in Great Britain in the 1980s during the darkest days of Margaret Thatcher, or live through the most progressive time period of Bill Clinton in the early 1990s, or Barack Obama in his 8 years as president, I would probably choose to live in the UK under Margaret Thatcher. Not because I like Margaret Thatcher, but in spite of all the damages she'd done as a prime minister, if you get sick in the UK, even during her years, if you got sick in the UK, you get treatment for free. In the United States, getting sick could bankrupt you. And there are some other issues too. I mean, the welfare state's a little more intact in the UK than it is in the United States. Issue that's very dear to me. Great Britain does not have capital punishment, has not had capital punishment since 1965. United States is United States still behave like some of the few communist regimes that exist in the world, or some of the radical Islamic states in the Middle East that uses the death penalty frequently. But here in the United States, we behave more like third world dictatorships than we do advanced Western democracies on issues like the death penalty. Um, Getting to the end of the Cold War, when the Soviet Union collapsed and the Eastern Bloc countries collapsed. Some people on the radical left will argue that because there was not a counterbalance force, that the center left in Europe and places like that throughout the world started to engage in what is called the third way, which was to move social democracy more away from their successful way of eliminating poverty and embracing neoliberal measures to turn these parties more conservative, like what was called the New Labor Project, started by Tony Blair when he took over the Labor Party. And when the Labor Party came into power in 1997, they pretty much kind of continued the Margaret Thatcher, John Major route of privatization or what have you. And it was something that was an abomination to me. But even here in America, when Bill Clinton became president, he pretty much continued the Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush path of basically kicking the New Deal consensus to the curb and engaging in neoliberal measures, and which is why we ended up with reactionary corporately managed trade agreements, which was anti-worker. We never had a single payer system, and when Obama became president, he borrowed the idea of healthcare reform from the neoconservative Heritage Foundation instead of going for a single payer program. And we're always engaging in half-ass measures, and sometimes even embracing dogmatically right-wing ideas faster than the right wing movements themselves. And so Bernie Sanders, and yeah, that was name was going to be mentioned eventually, came along in 2016 and looked at what Bill and Hillary Clinton did to the Democratic Party in the 1990s, and were like, enough of this shit. We got to end this third way crap. And so what Bernie Sanders was trying to do was trying to align the political Overton window back to the New Deal directions, FDR, and basically align the Democratic Party. Granted that Bernie Sanders can get nominated and get elected as president and get his program working, which looks like it's not going to happen, but doing that, we could end up with aligning the Democratic Party more along the lines of being like the British Labour Party, or being like the Social Democrats of Sweden, or being like the Socialist Party in France, or even though there's a much smaller group, but way more successful than the American left wing movement, I would say the New Democratic Party of Canada. I personally look to the New Democratic Party of Canada as kind of the model for the United States to follow, because while they are a small, while they're a minor party, they are a large minor party, and they pretty much keep Canada a humane place. So liberals in Canada, which the Liberal Party in Canada is kind of like the Democrats here, the Conservative Party in Canada is kind of like the Republicans here. The difference is that the Liberal Party is to the left of the Democrats, and that the Conservative Party is relatively sane compared to the Republican Party here. So, but the point is that the New Democratic Party kind of keeps Canada a humane place, And basically, with due respect to the Canadian people for the way I'm going to phrase this is why Canada is basically the United States with a single payer healthcare plan. So it's like the United States doing their shit correctly. So anyhow, I just wanted to talk about this, and maybe I'll do a video tomorrow commemorating International Labor Day. Feel free to comment, good, bad, or indifferent, and subscribe. Peace. And even though it's April 30th, one day in advance, happy midday or International Labor Day. Solidarity forever.